Hi, everyone. You're watching The Self Connection with Ginny Brown and Kelly Pietro, where we have conversations with a group of ascended masters known as the multitude of the greater good.
Kelly asked the questions and I channel the answers. The multitude of the greater good is a group of ascended masters, healers, and teachers, and they share with us their information and work with questions. And I just channel the answers. It's like it doesn't come into my mind and then I speak it. It comes directly through me and out and the words out of my mouth. So that's how it works for me. And Kelly's a very good question asker.
Well, today our viewers are the question askers. So we have a link in the episode description where you could submit your own questions through my website. So if while you're watching any questions arise, don't hesitate to send them our way because we love taking viewer questions. So that's what we're going to do today.
Right.
So random topics, viewer questions. You ready, Jen?
Alrighty.
Okay. So first one is, what is the purpose of cat purrs? Are they healing? Like when a cat purrs.
It is important to understand that when a cat purrs, it's the way of their expression of being. It has no real meaning other than they are quite content in who they are and what they are experiencing. In our estimation, when one is ready to allow oneself to expand, what does, and cats do quite easily. However, if one chooses to understand that a cat purr means something different, they are free to choose that meaning. As when one is content within one's own self, one can expand oneself in many different ways. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Well, that makes sense to me because I think a lot of people believe when a cat climbs up on you and purrs, that the cat is working to heal you. And so when the multitude says, if you want to believe that, you can. And what I imagine that means is if the cat is purring on you and you believe it's healing you, it's there to heal, then you're just opening up to more of yourself to allow the healing to come in.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Um, Makes me want to ask questions about dogs, but I don't have a question forming. So send in your dog questions, folks.
Yeah, dogs are a different animal.
Is there anything they want to share about dogs?
And that's a pun, right?
Yeah, yeah.
In our estimation, dogs are quite able to fend for themselves more than a cat. Therefore, they are able to allow themselves the ability to experience differently. In our estimation, there is no real explanation for why a dog does anything other than that's who they are and what they know to do. Do not be concerned, all is love.
I think it would be really fun to explore more about dogs and cats. So I'm going to put that request out there that folks send in their questions because I don't have a ton of experience having pets. We lived in an apartment growing up. We weren't allowed to have pets. And then by the time, actually, we did have a dog growing up, but by then I was older, off to college. And um, yeah, send in your questions about your pets. I'd be curious. We could do a whole episode on pets, but we need questions. Okay, on to the next random topic. Your question. In music, why does the minor third interval evoke the emotion of sadness?
When one is ready to experience what one is ready to experience, one will allow the information to flow to, it's like to channel that experience, but to um, ignite the, the experience to happen. In our estimation, it is not necessarily that key for everyone. It is that key for the person who asked the question.
Yeah, I love how the multitude reminds us that the human experience is unique to each person.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it may be true that the minor third interval evokes the emotion of sadness for many, but there's no hard and fast rules here on earth.
Right.
I think that, Ginny, it's interesting that you and I should become friends eventually. As I was doing a lot of my, as I was becoming more curious about energy and spiritual topics, I could feel in my body anytime, like, if I was listening to someone who was, let's say, in a teacher role, explain how energy works. Whenever there was a hard and fast rule, I could feel in me like, well, that's not always true.
Yeah.
And I don't that must have been my higher guidance, like kind of, I guess the wisdom of my higher guidance just making itself known that, like, don't go down these rabbit holes of this is the hard and fast truth because like everyone is different.
Yeah.
And I think it and I think the multitude like is constantly reminding us of that. So again, that we should be friends eventually makes perfect sense.
Right. Right.
um yeah, there's so much more I could say about that, but I will keep going on our viewer questions.
Okay.
Okay. What is the definition of the human soul? And is it same or different from the human being's higher self?
I'm not getting anything. Try them one at a time.
Well, I feel like I'm getting something.
All right.
And then maybe they can elaborate. I think that these terms, soul and higher self, are terms that we here on the earth plane have given to aspects of self that, we've assigned these terms in order for us to have words to describe a certain aspect of self. And so, well, I could sit here and say, well, the higher self is, a lower density part of yourself, and the soul is the more expansive part, right? Like I could sit here and define it that way. But that's just how I help myself to understand the different aspects of self. So, again, going back to there's no rules,
Right.
like who am I to define for another what the higher self is and what the soul is?
We can tell you, my dear, that you are quite well educated in that which you know which is right for you. We can also tell you that each one will feel within themselves what is right for them. If they are interested in accessing their soul self, they will allow that energy to flow. If they are interested in accessing that part which they call their higher self, they will allow themselves to experience that as well. However, in our estimation, their soul self and their higher self are two very different things. One is that part of self and spirit that says, okay, this is who I am, and I have lived many lifetimes, and I have much knowledge, and I contain it all within my soul self in spirit. And then the higher self says, okay, I'm here in the earth plane, and I'm doing my best to allow myself to connect myself with my quote soul self. In our estimation, it is the bridge, so to speak, that part of self that connects one's mind self with one's spiritual self and one's spiritual self with one's heart self. Therefore, when one is in connection with oneself on the heart and mind level and the soul level, a great deal can be accomplished. Do not be concerned. All is love.
Ginny, why don't you explain, because you've used this before, I don't think on the show though. your understanding with the water tower analogy.
Okay. Okay. And it's actually Sylvia Brown's analogy, which I liked very much, is that we're on the earth plane and there is only a very small part of us on the earth plane. And that could be seen as the bucket, and then there's this big water tower and it's huge. And if you can, I'm sure most everybody has seen water towers. And then the water tower is that spiritual part of self, which Kelly likes to call the soul self, which is in spirit, of course, and that contains all of our knowledge, all of everything we've experienced over our many lifetimes of being. And the bucket is that part of us on earth. And then the spigot that allows that information from the water tower, soul self, to the bucket earth self is what's called the higher self. And it's the spigot that, you can open and allow that information to flow. Now,
Wow.
I know a lot of people consider their higher self their soul self, but it's not really. It's the connection between yourself and your higher self and your soul being, super self.
Super self, yeah. The multitude gave us that one.
Yes, they did.
Okay, well, going with that then. So, okay, so I got bucket is me, Kelly, incarnated right now. And I've probably had other buckets, which are now incorporated in my soul self, right?
Hold on.
Well,
What do you mean you probably had other buckets?
like it's the earthbound self, right? Right now I'm Kelly, but I've lived other lifetimes, maybe as George. So there maybe was once a George bucket in 1845. I have no idea.
Right, which is the information from that lifetime is incorporated into your super self.
In
Yes.
the water tower. It's in the water tower now, right?
Yes. But when you said that, I said, oh, you have all these buckets, and it's like, oh, that could be misconstrued as did all those different parts of you on the earth plane. And that's not true.
Yeah. No, I think of like the bucket when you die, like the bucket, the body dies, but everything that the bucket held kind of gets reincorporated into the soul.
Right. All the new knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, all the new knowledge and wisdom and
Yeah.
experience.
Right.
Okay. So if the bucket's Kelly and the spigot is my higher self that allows more of my soul self to come through, right? Then I can fill my bucket with the parts of me, or my bucket can experience the parts of me that are in the soul aspect that I've experienced before.
Yes and no.
Oh, okay.
We come to the earth plane to learn certain things, accomplish certain things, or sometimes it's just to experience. But in that experiencing, we learn. But what can happen is that we've come to accomplish, say, I've come to accomplish patience, right? I've always had a lot of patience personally. But I'll just use that as an example. Someone comes to learn patience and has actually accomplished that and has allowed themselves to experience being calmer and more patient. Well, you don't need that information anymore. So you can release that and allow that to just be in your super self now. But it also, when you open up that spigot, you decide you want to learn something else, you can allow that information to flow through. It's not a hard and fast rule that, all of that's available. Well, it is, but you can only bring so much with you based on what it is you wish to learn. And when you've accomplished that, then you can release that which you no longer need and bring forth something more that you are interested in, I don't know, will help you in your new endeavor. I'll put it that way.
It's like playing a video game.
I don't know. I don't play video games, so
I
I,
just think about like my kids playing Minecraft and like they go into their, I'm gonna say it wrong. I don't know all the details of mine, but let's say you have like a tool chest and it opens a screen and it shows all the tools you have and you're like, oh, I need a pickaxe.
Mhm.
And then I got that in my last, before I died in the last level, I got a pickaxe. I'm gonna use that now, right? And then you could put it back in your tool chest. That's probably not how Minecraft works. I'm just using a video game analogy. But yeah, it's like and then you've built something and now that thing you built, I don't know, or maybe you've earned something. You've earned health levels or I don't know. A lot of
Yeah,
people equate life to like a simulation or a video game because it's kind of like similar the way a lot of video games are set up where you earn things and you use tools and I don't know.
I mean, the games are based on life experience.
Yeah, really. Not the other way around, right? Um, okay, so in that way too, if you gleaned experience, let's say you've gleaned patience in other lifetimes, you can call that forth, open the spigot, bring it in,
Right.
and say, you know, which is almost the same as praying, God, give me patience,
Mhm.
and then imagining the spigot and the patience falling into your bucket.
Right. You can do that.
Yeah. Okay, well, with that analogy though, let's talk about healing. So you can call forth the things that you've gleaned in other lifetimes, but let's say you're here to learn something. Let's say you're here to learn patience and you haven't maybe learned it in other lifetimes.
Right.
We work with the same analogy. I don't know.
So you've made that wish that you wish to accomplish learning patience, right? So you've done that. You've completed that process. And now you no longer need whatever it was that you had brought with you to learn that. So you can release that back into yourself because you no longer need it. And then you can allow the space for you to learn something else. So you move forward and you want to learn how to help others maybe. Maybe you haven't helped others in other lifetimes and it's a new experience for you. But there's certain things that you have learned in other lifetimes that can help you with that. So you allow the space for that information to flow through.
Love it.
It's basically information the way I see it.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like we just maybe answered this next question,
All right, what's the question?
but it's kind of a continuation. So I'll ask it anyway because maybe, wait, hang on. Okay, no, I need to ask first. Is there anything else the multitude would like to share on the topic we're talking about?
It is important to understand that each one allows each one's self the ability to bring through that which one needs when one needs it. It is quite helpful for one to be aware that that the process or of the process that is happening, however, not necessary. When one is ready to complete a process, one does, and when one is ready to allow oneself to move forward and learn or accomplish a different sense of being, one will. Do not be concerned.
Okay, that was validating to what you just shared.
Good.
Okay, so this next question. Would you please tell us in as much detail as possible, this is a loaded question, how we can better help people understand about energy?
Yeah.
I
It,
think the entire show hopefully accomplishes that, but let's entertain the question.
it is important to understand that energy on one level is that part of self that exists at all. One cannot exist in the physical state without the energetic self. And one's energetic self cannot exist without the energetic of the spiritual being. In our estimation, it is important to understand that as one moves forward within oneself, one will allow oneself the capacity of expansion and allowing oneself to expand to a higher and greater level of being. In our estimation, however, when one understands that energy is everywhere, sometimes it can be encapsulated as in a battery or something of that effect. It can move itself differently. However, energy is energy. Nothing on the earth plane can exist without being energy. In our estimation, there is that part of self that knows within one's heart that there is more to oneself than meets the eye, and that more to oneself is energy. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, they said something in there about energetic self, and then they said spiritual self. So that makes me think that that is separate. And I would like to understand, part of me wonders, is the energetic self, like, does a spiritual self like, they said something about a battery. So I imagine like the energetic self is the energy of that the self has created over time, but the spiritual self is the battery itself, like the encapsulation of it. I don't know why that's coming to me, but maybe they can explain that a little bit better, the differentiate the energetic self versus the spiritual self.
It is important to understand they are one and the same. One cannot exist without the other.
So then why are there two different terms for it?
Two different terms. What do you mean?
Yeah, I don't remember how they said it, but
Well, the battery, it was just an example.
yeah. So the spiritual self is the energetic self, the energy. Okay, so like when I think about my energetic self, I think about um, me being here on earth, emoting, right? I think it very much emotionally related. It's like my emotions are the part of myself in energy. Like that's the part that I've created energetically, right? I have the physical part, which I guess is matter created by energy, right? But then I have my emotional self, which is not necessarily matter, but it's the energy you can't see, right?
The feeling self.
The feeling self. Well, I try not to use feeling because, well, I guess in this case you can use them interchangeably because it's like feeling emotion or feeling sensation sometimes, which,
Yeah, but one is a physical manifestation and one is an energetic,
yeah.
right?
So like sensation is the feeling, is the
Physical.
physical manifestation, and that emotion is the energetically manifested, right? And so I think of the spiritual self encompasses the emotional self, but the physical part dies. So like it doesn't necessarily encompass that.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm just kind of thinking out loud.
We can tell you, my dear, it's like going around in circles, trying to figure out something that is quite simple.
Oh,
Energy is energy, that is all. When one is on the earth plane, one creates a physical self in order to allow oneself to experience the earth plane. Energetically, however, the energy is that part of self that is connected to that part of self in spirit. Therefore, it helps one's physical self on the earth plane operate at a higher level of being. We can tell you there is no reason for one to be concerned about the separation or connection of physical and energetic. The physical body, yes, it eventually ceases to exist. However, the energy that was possessed by that physical body lives forever on. Do not be concerned.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. So that's good. Thanks
Okay,
for saying it way more eloquently.
good.
I guess I'm always like trying to think of it scientifically for those out there who are more science minded than that want like explanation, you know? But I guess our show is here to challenge that.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think okay, I just had a question come up because I was watching, this is not like a viewer question, but it's not a viewer question, but it's a question that's out there. I was watching an interview with Paul Stamets. He is a mycologist, a researcher. He studies mushrooms medicinally, psychologically. You know, he's done a lot of work in that area. So I was watching an interview with him, and he was talking about I forget what they call it, like the awakened ape theory or something like that. This theory that human consciousness evolved from like apes eating magic mushrooms and their consciousness grew. So, what can the multitude say about the validity or the invalidity of that theory?
It is important to understand that a theory is a theory and it has many, um, it's like what I'm seeing is like all of these roots, many roots feeding into the theory, and therefore not one of them is true and correct. It is important to understand that when one allows oneself to experience, one can experience many things in many areas. And if one chooses to experience a magic mushroom, so to speak, one will allow oneself to experience what it is that one believes that that mushroom will bring forth, possess. In our estimation, none of it is true. None of it is real. And when one allows oneself to experience, that is all it is, an experience of being. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Wow, so like my big takeaway with the multitude is how much we create our own experience
Mhm.
through thoughts or through our spiritual selves steering us through the experiences we've chosen to have in this lifetime. And so that's why maybe it's sometimes hard to define concrete truths because what's true for one is not true for another.
Right.
And here we are, like in this physical realm, trying to define truth in a world that is created by individual truths. So, of course, we're fighting.
Well, I know at one point they were um, talking about the difference between what's true and what's truth. They're
Yeah.
things, but I'm not getting anything at that at this moment. That might be a good question for another time.
Okay. Yeah. I think, when I hear them say, like, it isn't true, it's what the individual believes to be true. Um, I can feel some people getting triggered by that. Like, I imagine when people hear that, they may be triggered, like, but I had this experience of it is true, you know? And it's like, I don't think the multitude's trying to take that away. Like, I actually think they're enabling you to have that experience more and more, and like asking you to allow that experience
Mhm.
because it is true for you. And just because it's not true for someone else doesn't take away that it's true for you because it is. We do create our own realities on so many levels, on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels.
Yeah, yeah. And that's true.
Oh, well, I think that's a good place to end, Ginny.
I think so.
Unless they have anything they want to add as a closing message.
Of course. It is important to understand, my dear, that there are many things that are true for some and not true for others. And there are those higher, irrevocable truths of being. In our estimation, it does not matter what one believes is true or not true. What is important is that one experiences who one is when one is on the earth plane. That is quite important indeed. In our estimation, we are most pleased at your questions, as they are quite thought-provoking for most. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Well, good. They just triggered a new question in me.
Well,
Do I save it for next time? Oh no, I guess I'm supposed to ask it now.
well, Brad.
What are some examples of irrevocable truths of being, as they call it?
We can tell you there are many, far too many to mention at this moment. We would highly recommend that you put that in your hat box, so to speak, and pull it out when the time is right. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, I had a feeling I was going to get a short answer.
Yeah, well,
You know me, I want a list.
I know, but you have something coming up and we have to really end. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I do think that that is something, like they said, I put it in my hat and it'll be something that they prompt me to ask. Well, is that an irrevocable truth of being?
all
So we'll trust in that process.
right.
All right, Ginny, thanks for being here and always channeling such great, clear messages
Well,
and for the
thank you.
multitude for providing their endless wisdom.
Thank
Yeah,
you for your questions. And anybody have any questions, as Kelly stated, please put them, go to her website and enter them there, and we'll be happy to answer them. As will we. Do not be concerned. All is love.
awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.